Welcome to Wealthy Living Radio Show. I'm Lisa, your host and founder of Wealthy Living. I help open-minded, big-hearted people connect to themselves, others, and the world around them, guiding them to live a wealthy life both personally and professionally. Each fortnight, I have conversations with a variety of different professionals to discuss topics that impact our well-being and the choices we make, and offer knowledge and tools to help you live a wealthy life. I feel I can confidently say that everyone wants a good quality of life, and there's fast-growing evidence to support that social connection is critically important contributor to good health, longevity, improving quality of life. Also supporting my mantra that connection is medicine. So today it gives me much pleasure to introduce my guest, a man who facilitates social interaction and works to create communities, seeking to put people into the heart of all places and developments. Founder of Village Well Placemaking consultancy, Gilbert Rochecouste. Gilbert is recognised locally and internationally as a leading voice in creating great places for people. He has successfully worked with over 1,000 cities, towns, main streets, universities, property developers, government organisations and communities over the past 25 years, crafting a powerful, integrated approach to creating vibrant, resilient and loved places. Gilbert is a true inspiration when it comes to following your dreams and creating change. His bold ideas and projects have made Melbourne the most livable city. So welcome, Gilbert.
Hi Lisa, great to be here. Thank you for having me on your wonderful show.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for coming. Now, I just wanted, before we go into your journey or your story a little bit, I wondered if you could just tell the listeners what placemaking is.
Sure. Placemaking, before I even say that, I think everyone is a placemaker. When you create a great place, you create a beautiful home, a beautiful party environment, a beautiful garden. Placemaking is about creating meaningful and connected places. It's about reconnecting people to their places, and it's about inspiring communities to really take their places back. It's how we create environments that are alive to the human spirit. We've been doing that for thousands of years. We have the original placemakers in Australia, our traditional owners, our Indigenous communities, and we've been here for 70,000 years, and understanding how humanity can be in place and on this earth, and what we do on an everyday basis in our physical and urban form really matters for mental and emotional and spiritual well-being.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I couldn't agree more. So what's got you to this position? I mean, that, what you've just shared is so true, and I think so many people would agree with that and do it. Maybe some people do it on a really small level, but you've chosen to, or you're now at a place where you're doing it on a local, national and international level, where you're really, you have a placemaking consultancy to bring about this change at a grander level. So what's brought you to that position to be able to be doing that in your life?
Yeah, it's the great question of everyone's life about, what's your purpose and following your bliss. And I think in some respect that's really informed at an early age. And it was for me, being born in a wonderful island of Mauritius, where, the centre of life was the village, and the village sort of square or the street became the place where everyone met, and we would eat, play, connect, celebrate, come out at night. So that really has informed my life and my essence and my work to become a placemaker. And before Village Well, my last full-time job, I was general manager of the largest shopping centre in the Southern Hemisphere, Chadstone, for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And And that gave me a perspective of place in a different context around commerce and consumption. But it really wasn't the core of why we are here and how we, in terms of our individual and collective wellness. So there's been lots of things that have informed my work, and I think one of the things that I got to do back in the 90s with Anita Roderick is set up the first ethical business foundation in Melbourne called EPOC that promoted the concept of, business as being a force for good and really embracing ethical practices and how we can create right livelihoods. And that really gave me a feel of, the importance of a moral narrative of how we live and where do we sit on, as humans on this planet, and what do we leave a legacy with, and can we leave the place better than what we found it? So I think all these things around enlightened commerce and integrated design and architecture, food security through to cultural planning and landscape design and, retail and economic development, all the things that make life full and connected. Because ultimately, I think what humans really search for is not meaning anymore, I've realised. And I used to think that for decades, but I think now people really search to be alive, to be alive fully and present and conscious in their place. So placemaking becomes a really important narrative for me in my life, and how I can facilitate and support communities and more enlightened developers and governments to really embrace a platform for renewal of their communities and the human spirit.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's certainly needed, and I think that, especially with the online world, and so many people seem to be spending so much time behind computer screens or behind devices, and yes, there's platforms that are, through social media and other platforms which are trying to facilitate connection, but it just can't replace that feeling of in-person connection and the wellness that that connecting in a physical space can bring, that a screen or a computer really can't bring. So that, I suppose, leads me to discussing the real importance of placemaking, and what are the real benefits of turning these places into spaces, and who's reaping these benefits?
Yeah, good question, Lisa. I think just that comment you made, just to go back one little bit about technology. I'm a big fan of technology, but of technology for what sake and for what purpose, and making it more human-centred. So technology can be a great benefit if it reconnects us to something bigger than ourselves. Moving from that I to we is the real big shift in technology in the future, and the benefits of placemaking are numerous. As we've, I always ask the question, I've asked this maybe 3,000 times to developers and community members, and I always said, what's your favourite place? And 9 times out of 10, their favourite place is a place that's pre-1945, so really pre-cars, and also pre-shopping centres, suburban sprawl and development. So we're really about human scale, walkable communities, places that are intimate, where we had street life and community life, where we understood where we sat. We had more time to connect. So I think we can't be too romantic and go back too far. But importantly, I think in the 21st century context of placemaking, we need to sort of adapt to the best ways of how we best live in our environments. And when we create places that are walkable, and we have local shops, and we have local food systems, and we celebrate, farmers, the local farmers, and we through farmers markets, and we have our streets that are much more walkable, that kids can play on, and the importance of neighbourhoods as places and local, as I said, local shops. So when we start to put all that together, it really starts to connect to a real series of well-being indicators. When people start to walk more, because there's less obese, they're more fit. When people start to connect more, there's an increased level of connection and emotional and mental health. And when people celebrate more, our spiritual quotient and index goes up, where we start to connect more with something that's a bit more meaningful. And all of these makes us actually more human. And ultimately, this is what we actually, when someone is asked on their deathbed, what do you regret? It's like, I wanted to play more, I wanted to connect to my neighbourhood more, spend more time with my family, follow my bliss, be more happy. So all these things are very much about place and sense of place, because we've got 80% of our brains are primal, and it's geared toward connection. And you said that connection is medicine. So that's the platform and the benefits of placemaking.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, really, doesn't it? Because everybody is striving to connect more and to have the social interaction, but there seems to be these roadblocks into, I suppose, where we moved into this modern society, and places weren't set up for so much social interaction and engagement. So it's so fantastic that someone like yourself and other placemakers around are coming to really work with local governments and developers and planners and local businesses, so that you can all collaborate together to really provide these sort of spaces that encourage more connection. So
that's right. And just to add to that, I think the key word you just said there, Lisa, was collaboration, and learning the true meaning of how do we authentically collaborate and engage with communities. And importantly, that's something we're just starting to relearn. How do we authentically engage with diverse peoples, and how do we excite our young people to get off their phones and to come out into the streets and come out to festivals? And how do we re-embrace our elders and engage them in more authentic ways of connection, so they're not pushed away? So all of these things are absolutely critical to our mental, emotional and spiritual well-being.
Yeah, so how do we do that? How, you're, I suppose I imagine that in your job you're educating these councils and planners and developers, etc., to create these authentic public spaces that are sustainable and engaged and develop resilient communities. So what sort of things do you do that or have you seen that work? Like how do you create these successful and authentic public places?
And look, it starts from so many levels, and that's a great question. I think just for the, your audience is just, mum and dads or individuals or young people, it can really start with you. I know when about 15 years ago when I used to live in Coburg, we illegally took over our verge and put a seat, put a little playground, put, fruit trees and put a community garden on there. I mean, it was a pretty radical step, and the council said that was illegal, and all the neighbours were freaking out what we were doing. But, ultimately what we were doing was connecting to our community, and people, all the people sat on that bench, and people understood that, we were expressing ourselves, into our street. And, 7 years later, we had 10 verges. The whole street became like community gardens, and people started sharing food and breaking bread together and celebrating. So all these things were really, really important for building community. And for our work is about engaging in an authentic way. And also what you said, people don't know what they don't know. So we sort of feed an amazing amount of knowledge and inspiration of what's going around the world, all these best practice case studies that really says